Hey, Tony and Michaela, can you guys hear me? Just want to make sure.
Yep, I can hear you.
All right, good to go. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Thank you for showing up. It's 1:02, and this is gonna be the continuation of our planning session that we had last week. So obviously last week, just to recap, I'm gonna get into the agenda. So we went through the agenda and we finished up with our distinguished guest, which was Claire Curiel. And I allowed that to go just because we're talking about leadership, and leadership is a foundation to the planning piece. And when we get into project management session, you're going to see how it all ties together. With that said, today we're going to get into the planning process deep dive. I'm going to go ahead and just start from there, even though I got through step one, just so it's cohesive for today. And then we'll get to key takeaways. And then I'll have links. You're going to see that I'm going to be talking about different templates, things of that nature. And I just want you to know that I will have a link at the end of this for you to get those. So, and then we'll get to questions and discussion at the end. So we'll get right into the planning process deep dive. So as everybody remembers, um, from last week, I talked about definition of planning, right? So this is right out of the project management body of knowledge. Planning are those processes required to establish the scope of the project, refine the objectives, and define the course of action required to attain the objectives that the project was undertaken to achieve. And the way I look at it is just simply we're understanding before doing. So before we do anything, we need to understand the problem we're trying to solve. So why is planning important? Well, as you all know from my background, being a Marine, one of our doctrinal publications is Plan. That's the name of it. And it talks about, and it states that it is a preparation process. And I agree with that. And you look at the second bullet there, that's right out of Sun Tzu. He talks about planning is that by which harm is avoided and advantage gained. And I just look at that stuff as if you're already able to slow down, understand what you're about to solve, truly understand the problem, then you'll probably avoid some pitfalls. Maybe there's some obstacles that really you could have probably removed before you even started executing, things of that nature. And I really feel that's what Sun Tzu's getting at. And as we know, poor planning is often cited, for failed projects, organizations, things of that nature. So here's the planning philosophy. As you guys can see there, the project management triangle. I have it there just as a reminder. But when it comes to these three bullets here, what I want people to understand is the leadership driven, right, planning piece. If you have a project, right, that it starts with an idea, maybe it's a proposal, whatever it may be, there's a leader that is going to be driving that process, or should, right there. At the end of the day, if goals and objectives are established, then to achieve those goals, it's going to be that leader at the end that is responsible. And then I just feel like that leader is responsible for, or and to the group for those things I talk about, right? When I talked about what does leadership do? They provide that guidance, they manage that risk, and they make those timely decisions. So, when you're looking at the planning process, they should be there to be able to provide those three things to the team. The one team concept, this one team concept is all about being able to bring in different, people from different organizations. You're probably going to have people that are not necessarily direct reports. Probably going to have different organizations that are obviously outside of, say, we're talking about the University of Arizona. Maybe it's somebody from the University of Oklahoma. Maybe it's somebody from UCLA. Well, we don't have any control over them, administratively or otherwise. So it's about influencing them, right? But having that one team concept, letting them know that they're all part of a group trying to solve this particular problem. And I think that's very important. and leadership is the one that is responsible for creating that culture. So that's why I talk about that culture of success. This is where it comes into play. And then integrated planning. Integrated planning is about understanding the people and that you need at the table to properly put in place the solution that you need for whatever problem you're trying to solve. So it's like bringing the right people at the right time from the right organizations with the right expertise, all that good stuff coming to the table to be able to properly solve whatever you're trying, whatever your problem may be, and whatever project goals and objectives you're trying to accomplish. Well, making sure that you have all those people. So, in talking about that, when do we plan? So, up top here, project life cycle. So you could see there's a phasing construct here, right? As I talked about last week, you start the project, you organize and prepare, you carry out the work, and then you end the project. And then you have those process groups, and this is right out of our process groups and practice guide. It's also mentioned in our project management body of knowledge. And there's obviously a initiating process, and then we got to get to the planning, right? So the initiating process, again, it could be a PI is saying, hey, I have this idea, or maybe it's a proposal that needs to be written, to be able to respond to a proposal solicitation, things of that nature. Whatever it is that is initiating the process, then you got to get to planning. And that's what we're going to be talking about. And right now, you're going to see as we continue through the next session, which will be next week, project management, that's once we have the plan in place, now we start executing. And then we start monitoring and controlling those processes. And then we close it out. So here's a planning process. So what I like I've discussed already, you're not going to necessarily find this written anywhere. The closest you're going to get is probably in military planning processes, in which I was inspired to be able to put this together. That applies the way I look at it. It applies here at the university or in a university setting, and I've already used it for the project that I'm currently in charge of and executing. And then also I used it for just recently, probably in the last 2 months. I put this planning process in a place for a proposal, and it works. So first things first, you got that step one. You're gonna frame. It's called a framing session, is what I'm calling it. That's where you're gathering the information. It's where you're brainstorming. And you're understanding the problem. And I'm going to do a deep dive on each one of these steps. So this step one to me is the most important step, because this is where you're truly understanding the problem before you're trying to solve it. And then step two, that's when you start putting together that course of action. Just like the definition of planning states, then you come up with the course of action that readily answers how you're going to solve that problem. So then you get into solution development. Typically, it starts with the concept, and then we move it into functional and detail level planning, which ultimately gets you to an actual plan that is executable. And then step three, you want to evaluate that solution. And I'm going to give you 4 criteria that you want to put that plan against. And all you're trying to do there is just improve the plan. So you're coming out of step two, and you think, hey, I think I have a very good solution here. You put it through an evaluation, and then all you're trying to do is improve it. And then once the planning style has and the team has decided, hey, yeah, I think we have a very solid product here, then what I would say is you're going to take finger to keyboard, and you're going to actually capture it and develop a written plan. So, and then that's that approved detailed written plan is the outcome of that particular step. And then you're ready to move to step 5, which is transition, which is when you start executing the actual plan that you just put together. And then you can see in the center there, it's understanding and improving, and it goes counterclockwise. And the idea there is that maybe you get through step 1 You think you have all, you have everything, in one bag, and you're like, okay, I think we understand where we're going. You're starting into step two. You start developing that solution, and then all of a sudden, um, in comes some more information. Maybe it's via an email. Maybe it's, one of our colleagues, one of our team members says, hey, I think we need to consider this as well. And we may have to go back to step one just to make sure that we truly understand what's going on before we can continue on with solving the problem. And I would strongly advise to do that, because you don't want to force something without having all the right information. And let me step back. You're never going to have all the information, because then we could spend 5 years trying to figure out that we have everything, right? That's not what I'm getting at here. What I'm saying is there may be something significant that is going to change our course of action, that we need to make sure we go back to make sure we understand that we have everything captured, so that way we could address it properly through a solution. So, and that will save us a lot of time, even though it may be like, oh man, this is going to set us back a week. It's better than setting us back 5 months or 6 months or even longer. Okay, so I'm going to get into step one, framing session, right? So this is going to be dense, but I'm going to walk you through it. And then, like I said, there's templates. And the idea here is I'm introducing this to this audience, and I understand that. And again, like I said, you're not necessarily going to see it captured like this. At least I haven't found it captured this detailed. But I want to be able to implement something like this to help our family here at the U of A to properly look at problems and then solve them in a very methodical way. So step one, framing session. The whole purpose is to achieve an understanding of the problem. And that's what I'm saying. I really feel like this step is the most important. So those key inputs, like I talked about, strategic plans, maybe it's business rules, maybe it's regulation, policies, and procedures that we need to adhere to for whatever type of project we're about to venture on. Maybe it's a grant agency funding program documentation. Maybe it's an approved or draft proposal document that we're looking at. Some notes. Maybe it's notes from meetings that you had leading up to that point. Maybe it's email correspondence that you've had maybe with the PI and other folks within the organization and outside the organization. And then you're going to be looking at if it's a director, whoever's leading the project. Is it a PI? Is it, somebody on the staff? What is it? What is their experience, expertise, judgment? And all that needs to be taken into consideration, right? And then ultimately, I introduce, again, this template, a framing session template, that as you go through the team actions, this is very much what I mean as a team action. So a lot of times you'll find that in many organizations, the project manager is left alone to figure it all out. Once in a while, we'll have a meeting, and then, it's like, oh, well, uh, project manager, please bring forth the solution. Well, the idea here is it's turning that whole piece on its head, right? Because what I'm saying is everybody that's at the table should be part of solving and understanding the problem. In this case, we're trying to understand the problem. So you're developing those org charts, identifying stakeholders, who are the partners and planners, things of that nature, right? You're going through task analysis. Maybe what are some of the high level tasks that you need to accomplish? Getting into assumptions, limitations. Those limitations are those things that you can't do, and the things that you have to do. Requests for information. Those are questions. Those are questions that you may have as a team. And I have a very methodical way to capture that, track them, to make sure that we're running down those particular answers to those very, very important questions that the team may have. Shortfalls, that could be personnel, resources, could be money, when I say resources, um, and it could be software. Heck, it could be a number of things, but that's something that as you're going through and you're identifying those shortfalls, and those are those discussions that you're having, with the group. You're identifying risks, and then putting together risk mitigation, time constraints. Obviously, there's going to probably be key dates that you're going to need to establish, or have been already established for you, that you need to adhere to. Develop a valid and validate a budget. So, like I said, I'm just coming out of a team that was writing a proposal for NSF, and the budget was one of the things that we had to look at. So if it applies, then great. And then defining the problem. At the end of the day, the reason that the proposed mission statement here is at the end is because when you get done with this step, you have a well thought out proposed mission statement. And that proposed mission statement, what I look at is there's a task and purpose. Why are we doing this? And that gives the whole team that motivation of why, and really giving everybody a focal point of why we're doing this. Why is this project so important? Why are we doing this? And it shouldn't just be the PI just coming up with it, just on the top of their head. Like it should be something that we are helping them with those three things I talk about: providing guidance, managing risk, and making those decisions. And one of the decisions coming out of here for that person that's in charge is looking at that mission statement, saying, "Yep, that answers the mail." And then as we get to the key outputs here, again, there's that approved mission statement. You're also going to probably have a draft budget, and then you're going to have a framing session brief that is going to be developed going through this process. And then at the end, as you move to step 2, your director, PI, whoever's in charge, right, should be able to give you, and I say should, right, but they should be providing the guidance to the team on, like, hey, this is kind of the way I'm envisioning solving this problem now that I understand because of this framing session brief. Maybe providing some initial guidance to the team before they set forth trying to solve this problem. So here's an example of the agenda for a framing session, right? So the things that you're going to probably want the whole team to understand and just put everybody on one page, right, is what are the inputs that you reviewed, right? That, again, going back to, was it emails? Was it a proposal? Was it a draft proposal? Was it correspondence? What has informed this particular project to be initiated, right? Stakeholders and planners, you're gonna have like an org chart to be able to identify all those folks that are involved. You're gonna have probably a list of requests for information, those assumptions, the limitations, shortfalls, the risk and mitigation measures, the task analysis, so identifying key tasks, and then maybe a list of activities, maybe that needs that's probably going to be happening throughout that you're envisioning. Then that problem statement, and then that proposed mission statement. Okay, so for step 2, solution development. Again, the inputs, you're coming out of that step 1, and what do you have? So you already have that approved mission statement. You have that guidance from the PI, maybe the director. You have that draft budget, and you have a framing session brief. So you have a lot of information moving into this one, right? And so the things that, again, those templates that I was talking about, is you're going to have a solution development brief template, and then a rough cut solution template. And that's going to be important as we talk through team actions. One of the things I want to just hit on, the whole purpose of this particular step is to develop a solution for accomplishing the mission. That's it. This is your course of action as it reads out in the definition of planning. So as we get into the team actions, you're developing that conceptual framework. So again, it's a sequencing actions across time. Maybe it's in phases. So, is it, maybe you're doing design, and then you're doing a launch, and then you're executing, and then maybe you're getting done with that, and then maybe you're in your last year, and then maybe you're onboarding additional pilots, and then the project ends in said date. However, that phasing construct works for you, that's something that you'll need to really think through here. And like I said, is it time? And I always look at projects. There's always a beginning, and there's typically an end. So you got to be able to put some parameters on that project that you're working through and you're trying to solve. You're going to identify objectives. So there may be higher level objectives, and the reason that's important is because when you start developing key results, those are also tasks, right? Now, and these are terms that here, since I've been here at the U of A, is what they use, right? They use objectives, which are higher level, and not necessarily tasks. And then from my experience so far being here, those key results are identical to what I'm used to calling tasks. And they use this acronym SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound, is what that task should look like. Well, if you look at it, the who, what, when, where, and why, those are the 5 W's. I'm sure people are familiar with that. As long as you have that, I think you're meeting that. You're adhering to SMART. And then you're going to get into maybe a refined org chart. So as you're coming out and you have some RFIs and you have shortfalls, well, maybe those shortfalls are now being answered, right? You had a shortfall because you needed a data scientist. Well, all of a sudden, you're in this step and it's been identified by name, a data scientist to the team. Well, that person now needs to be added to that org chart. Those are those kind of things that when I say refine the org chart, that's what's going to happen, right? You're going to refine and validate the budget. Maybe there's less money, more money, or maybe what you initially had coming out of step 1 as a draft, now you're refining it, right? And then this is where you probably want to get into refining a communications plan. And that's something that I've seen here as being a very relevant thing in some proposals, things of that nature. So that's something to think about. The other thing I've seen as well is like a data management plan. So that would be something that would be in here as well, that would need to be developed. So some key actions, right? Develop a rough cut solution. This is a technique. So there's like in progress reviews is what I call them, my PRs, where so as you're putting this together, before you go down too much down rabbit holes, right? You're able to present to the PI or your director, whoever's leading the project, with just a snapshot of, hey, this is how we're thinking about this. Here's the phasing construct we're looking at. Here's the timeline, right? Here's some key tasks. Here's the objectives. Here's some key tasks or key results, right, that we're looking at accomplishing across this phasing construct. It gives that PI and or that director, et cetera, the opportunity to weigh in, right? And it saves you time and the rest of the team time by being able to get eyes on and input, i.e. guidance, right? From that leadership to then be able to steer the leadership or to steer the planning team one way or the other. Or, really what you want is, hey, you guys are on the right track. Keep it moving in that direction. I really like that. Or, oh, you know what? I was talking to so-and-so and they brought in this. And so those kind of conversations come out, but it's not at the end. You're doing this in progress review. Could be, let's just say you've given yourself 1 month to come up with the solution. Well, this could come at a week, maybe 2 weeks into it. So then that way you have 2 more weeks to be able to really refine and get going to where your director or your PI is telling you they want to be. And now I have templates for that, and I'll show you a couple of slides here. You're going to see those couple examples that I have for you for that rough cut solution. And then at the end of the day, you're coming out of here with the develop. You want a detailed solution. And then your key outputs for this particular step is that you have a solution development brief. So this will be a very detailed brief. And I say detailed, well, as much detail as you want it to have, right? But it should be taking you from a concept into something that is executable at the end of the day. So here are some of those rough cut solution examples I was talking about. So, this one on the left, as you're looking at it, the one that's Q1 FY23 and beyond, you can see this was an example that I put together for the project that when I got here to the U of A, this is the project that I was assigned. And so I was already putting this together to make sure that I understood where we were at, because when I stepped in, this project was already ongoing for 3.5 years. So a little different than if I was started from the beginning, right? But same difference. I was able to put this together and be able to go back to my director and say, am I thinking about this correctly, to be able to put the rest of the team on the right track? So again, I just have a very simple phasing construct. You could see I had phase 1 through 5. In this case, it was planning, service authorizations, the Soteria pilots. We had alpha, beta, and then getting into the Soteria expansion of services, right? So this is the way we laid it out, and here was a timeline. The one on the right was a very simple. This was a very simple plan. Why I looked at it, because it was essentially a proposal. This particular team needed to write a proposal, right? That needs to be submitted on 1 December. And this is an actual project that's ongoing. So you could see I just captured some key events up top, right? And then just phased it out. Planning, coordination, execution. We're working through the proposal, and then it's finalized, and then it's ultimately submitted with some key events on top of that. And then you could see some supporting down here: travel, purchase computers, purchase drones. Like, these are some supporting efforts that may be happening as well within the project. So then you have a very nice one snapshot. This is a very good product right here, where you can just give it a quick snapshot, and then you can plan against this. Because this is a concept, right? It's still conceptual, because there's a lot of detailed planning that still needs to get into, like, say, the drone summit. Like, we've already had several meetings just on that alone, but at least this gives everybody a snapshot. All right, this is just a bigger picture of this one. And the same thing for this, if you guys want to take a closer look. Your solution development brief agenda would look something like this, right? You would want to use in-progress reviews to refine the solution. So you would have had maybe 1 or 2. What I would recommend is a couple IPRs, and only you and your team would know, like, how many of these do you actually need. You may need 4, I don't know, because you have more time to be able to help refine and stuff like that. But if you don't have time, then maybe at least 1. You want at least 1. Inputs reviewed, maybe an orientation for this the last rough cut COA slide that I showed you. When I put together the orientation, they were going to be traveling to different areas, and I just put, like, key locations, traveling. It was literally a map, right? Just to give people time and space, understand where we're at, things of that nature. Then the mission statement, the updated org chart, and some of the things that you're looking at there is showing who's working with you directly, what organization are working with you in coordination, and maybe there's some administrative relationships, like people that maybe it's an organization that's helping you manage your funding, stuff like that, but they're not necessarily in direct linked to what you're doing for this particular project. Uh, Plan of action and milestones, schedule of events, some key metrics that the team may have come up with, objectives and tasks. These should be refined a lot better rather than them being more conceptual in nature. You'll probably have a planning horizon. Maybe you'll have a meeting cadence that needs to be put forth, things of that nature. This is where all that kind of stuff would come out. And then overall risk assessment, if it applies, and then questions and discussion. So then we get into step 3, which is evaluate the solution. So as you come out of the solution development brief, something you'll have at your disposal will be this project plan template, because you're ultimately going to be writing the plan. The idea would be, once you get through this, you're going to start writing the plan. And so some of the team actions, you're going to go through an evaluation, and this is a recommendation. And again, so looking at, is that plan, is it feasible? Is it acceptable? Is it suitable? And is it complete? And as you answer this, you may, like, again, the counterclockwise understanding and improving, you may need to go back to step 2 to refine, and then before you get back here to reevaluate your solution, and then you begin that draft written plan, and then you ultimately you approve the solution brief, and then your PI or whoever's in charge is going to say, all right, let's put pen and paper. The idea here would be, if you know that this is working this way, you already know that draft written plan, you could probably already start writing it, at the end of, at the beginning of step 2, right? So right now, this just seems very lockstep and like, but if this is something that your team is used to, you're already going to have that draft written plan, right? And you're just filling it out as you go. So when you get here, it's just refined. So evaluation criteria. So as I talked about, is it feasible? Does a solution accomplish the mission within the available time and with the resources that you have available to you? Some of the things to consider, is like the budget, the type of people. Do you have the right experts? Things of that nature. Is it the right people at the right time with the right expertise? Do you have the right equipment? Is it the right software? Maybe different apps or applications that you may need. And do people have the required training for whatever you're trying to do? Is it acceptable? Is a solution delivering an acceptable return on investment, which everybody talks about ROI all the time. So, which is proportional worth the cost and time and resource to accomplish the mission? Like, are we trying to bite more than we can chew? Are we trying to do something that just doesn't make any sense with the resources that we do have and the time constraints that we may have? Is a solution complete? Does a solution identify the tasks, like all the tasks, that are required to accomplish the mission? Are we just well, we'll figure that out later? The idea is you get it all down so that way you don't run into issues down the road. And then does the solution identify risk and how to mitigate them? And then lastly, is your overall plan, is it suitable? Does the solution achieve the overall mission with alignment to the principal investigator's guidance and director's guidance, or whoever is in charge, right? So the idea is like, hey, they wanted to go in a certain direction. But again, this goes back to that rough cut solution, having that dialogue that you don't want to get to this point, and it's the first time that you're bringing in your PI or the director to provide additional guidance. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it's too late, but it's not too late. You just now got to go back counterclockwise to make sure that they're aligned, right? So this evaluation criteria, again, is just an example of how to look at your solutions before you implement them. And then you develop that written plan. Pretty self-explanatory. There's plenty of documents that again that I'm gonna provide you. There's a Project Management Institute provides a pretty good written plan a written plan template. Everybody here at the university I've seen, they do have templates. Like I said, I was part of a writing proposal team. or proposal writing team, and they had a template. So whatever that is, right? Whatever it is, that's what you're going to use. And then team actions at this point, right? So once it's written, you're going to want to conduct a reconciliation, do a crosswalk, look at those final revisions to solution and final revisions to the budget. Those things all need to be aligned. So again, just coming out of, and I'm giving you as many examples I have, all my examples I have here at the U of A, but I have plenty of examples of my military time as well. But conducting these reconciliations and crosswalk is extremely important, right? Because when you write it and the things that you said or the things that you've captured, are they actually aligned, and is everything speaking the same language? So one of the things I caught, we reviewed the budget for this proposal, and there was some things that were written in the proposal that was not aligned with what was written inside the actual written proposal. So those are the things that you would capture here in this step. And then at the end of the day, boom, you come out of step 4, approve detailed rent plan, and then transition. So then we get into, obviously, you got that approved rent plan. And then for this one, the whole purpose here is that the transition teams focus from planning to execution, right? And so there's a kickoff meeting, and the kickoff meeting is well documented, in the project management body of knowledge, and kickoff meeting does exactly what these key outputs say. Expectations are set, the common understanding of the plan, everybody's on literally the same page or pages, and you acknowledge that PI or that director and that leadership is saying, hey, I've acknowledged that we are beginning the project as of today. So those transition techniques, right? Again, how do most people do it? I mean, everybody has a different way to do it. So you're planning where you are. So wherever you are, how do you do it? And I would say then do that. But I'll give you recommendations here, right? It's like most effective is bringing in those stakeholders, getting in that project management team, the project team members participate in this kickoff meeting, because you want to make sure everybody is properly informed before we start executing. Like I said, we could get to this point and one of the stakeholders is like, hey, you're not answering the stuff that I had asked you to do. And so again, counterclockwise, improve and understand, right? You may have to go back and address those issues with those stakeholders. Well, what does that tell us? That tells us that we should have brought in the stakeholder early and often. So that this is again why when you get to this point, everybody should have been informed. They should have been part of the planning process. And so this is where it becomes important. And then, you know, again, I got a solution development brief for you to use, so that way you don't have to reinvent the wheel. But you can certainly do it the way you do it in your organization. And then, using a written plan. So you could either have a brief where it's on, on PowerPoint or whatever other media you want to use, or it's a written plan and you're just scrolling through it, right? And it's like a Word document or a Google Doc, whatever it is, and making sure everybody's being briefed and they understand what the plan is. So wherever you are, that's what you should use. So I've part of this session, again, which was last week, I talked about the leadership piece and direct reports and the 2 lanes. So when you look at this particular slide here, I'm trying to bring it together and how it applies to the planning piece. So from the top, communication, cooperation, collaboration, and critical thinking. Those are the things that that the leadership should be looking to provide for the team. And obviously, they're providing guidance, they're managing risk, they're making decisions. And we're all doing it. Again, the leadership and direct reports, again, those are two perspectives. And again, to break down those barriers, you're utilizing that humility, authenticity, having that positive mental attitude. You're creating that leadership, and everybody in the team is creating that environment, so that way we can do those things, properly communicate, cooperate, collaborate, and critically think as we go through the planning process, right? And that's why I've talked about, you know, um, with leadership, right? When you're going through this planning process, there's going to be biases, right? All those other things that come around, right? So conflict management, right? The way people get along, all those kind of things, right? This is where it matters, because when you're inside and you're inside this process and you're planning, and you do it now, but what I'm saying is this will be a very methodical way. But again, what I'm trying to do here is bring it all together of how a cohesive team and the culture should have been created to allow you to get to some pretty solid solutions. So some key takeaways here. So leadership is responsible for creating a healthy work environment and culture, right? Where the team, the way I look at it, should be able to thrive. Leadership and team members must take ownership of their contributions in the planning process, right? So everybody knows they're bringing some kind of expertise to the table, things of that nature. And so they should, the way I look at it, it's it should be an honor and a privilege for you to be there to be able to partake in that and to be able to contribute to a solution. I just think it's fantastic. But it's about taking that ownership and saying, "Yep, I want to be a productive member of the family." And then planning does not think for you. So this whole process, I just put that I just try to explain. I hope I explained it okay. Um, it doesn't think for you. You're still having to bring your own thoughts. You're still bringing your own expertise. You're still doing all that stuff. All the planning process is doing for you is trying to help you organize your thoughts to be able to make them coherent, so they're not all over the place, and you're able to capture them in a way that is, one, productive, organized, and in a way to be able to properly articulate. And then lastly, understand the problem and improving the plan is continuous. Like I talked about, you can get to the end, right? And you're in transition, and maybe a stakeholder raises their hand and says, "Hey, you didn't address this." Well, guess what? It's still, you're in that continuous cycle. Okay, so here is a link um, to those templates I talked about throughout this brief. And I also have the templates in there that are the project management templates as well. So you'll see like a Gantt chart, you'll see a RACI matrix, you'll see a work breakdown sheet as well. I have a bunch of templates that I'm going to be addressing during our next session next week, but I already have them in there at this link here in the box. And then what I'm going to do, I'll make sure I put the link in the chat. Okay, so right now we're at 1:46, so we're really good with time, and